All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. We're excited today to have a discussion on a sustainable wardrobe. So my name is Deven Patten. I am Director of Sustainability with Young Living, but I am also a board member for the Utah Recycling Alliance. I've been associated with the URA now for about a year. So we're really excited. Unfortunately, due to today's world, this is not something in person. So we started the Trash Talk series as a great way to continue spreading the information and spreading good education around as best we can until such time when we can be together. So we're fingers crossed soon we'll be able to start our in-person events, whether our Charm or our Fix-It clinics. But until then, we're going to utilize this virtual scenario. The great part about this is we're learning new things every day, and our reach, I hope, is expanding, although we're not in person. So again, welcome to all those joining. Today we're talking a little bit about curating a sustainable wardrobe. I am not a wardrobe expert, although I'm somebody that is concerned about it, obviously. If you haven't heard of issues of fast fashion, I'm going to share a little bit on that, but then I'm going to share or turn the time over to my counterpart here, to Viviana, and she'll talk a little bit about minimalism. So Viviana is a good friend that we met through work, and I've worked on some great sustainability projects together, and she is a minimalist. And I'll let her talk a little bit more about what that means and whatnot. But the whole purpose of this is the Young Living where we work, we had developed some content to share with our employees on the issues with fast fashion and your wardrobe. And we wanted to share those here as well. Just some interesting factoids I wanted to share, and most of these you can find all over the internet, but I did find where they came from, so I know they're substantiated. Several different surveys from McKinsey and Company have shared some interesting facts about fashion. For instance, 93% of brands surveyed by Fashion Checker aren't paying garment workers a living wage. Why are we talking about that with sustainability? Well, when we talk about triple bottom line, the social impacts of that absolutely are very important, very vital. And clothing production is actually the third biggest contribution to climate change and carbon emissions. Clothing production is only behind manufacturing and the technology industry in terms of carbon emissions. So we know that's having a big effect, and that was through the House of Commons environmental audit. Here's kind of a scary fact. More than $500 billion of value is lost every year due to clothing underutilization and a lack of recycling. And that was from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. That number kind of jolted me as I was thinking, $500 billion of value is lost every year due to clothing underutilization. Looking at our own wardrobes, it's something that just kind of blows my mind that there's that much value sitting in unused clothes or clothes that aren't recycled or just thrown away. And I think, well, why is that? What drives that loss of value of clothing? And another report from The Guardian in 2019 found that 1 in 3 young women, which is the biggest segment of consumers for the garment industry, considers an item to be old once it's worn once or twice. Another number that I just was like, okay, after once or twice, all of a sudden that value is gone, which is pretty crazy. The survey that I mentioned by McKinley and Company shows that on average, individuals, consumers, are buying 60% more items of clothing today than we did 15 years ago, but we're only keeping those items half as long as we used to. So that in itself is exactly what fast fashion means. Is we're consuming these clothes and buying these items so fast, not getting value out of them, and then turning them over, and unfortunately, most of them get landfilled. And so that's the type of thing that we want to try and avoid, and just spread the information on what you can do to avoid that. The URA has done a great job in the past at hosting Fix-It clinics that are focused on clothing. Something that we will continue to try and do again when we can meet in person. But learning some basic clothing repairs are some ways that we can go about trying to combat this. Some very simple mending skills, darning socks, or replacing buttons or zippers, sewing a seam, or fitting clothing to you. And Viv, I don't know if this is something you're going to talk a little bit about, but I personally have, in the last couple of years, I've learned how to use a serger, because I will go and buy a polo shirt like this,
Yeah.
and it comes in a size that's a little boxy for me, and I've learned how to throw it on a serger and tailor it so it fits me.
Well, I don't know how to do that, but that's awesome.
It's a very simple skill, honestly. I learned it from a mother and a grandmother, know how to sew, and anything we didn't know. There's this great resource called YouTube. You
Yeah.
can pull it up and look at so many easy repairs. But then again, for those that may not, learn that way, that's where we have these fix-it clinics that we try and host to the URA, or why we're hosting an event like this. So there's a lot of different things. So rather than me just keep talking at you, Viv, I would love for you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what minimalism can do to help us be more sustainable in our wardrobe.
Yeah, sure thing. So I'm Viv, or Viviana is my full name, Campbell last. So yeah, I started my minimalist journey about a couple of years ago, and it's kind of turned into sustainability as well. And so it's nice to kind of put those two together, But yeah, so thanks for those stats. That's a really awesome thing to know first off before I talk about minimalism. So let me just share my screen real quick. Okay. You can see, right, Devin?
Yep, perfect.
Okay, good. So we'll just go to the next slide. Oops. Okay. So I'll just introduce, I'm sure most of you have heard about minimalism, but I get these quotes once a week from the minimalists on my phone, and some of them I really enjoy. So this one is, letting go is not only freeing, it's free. No purchase necessary. Meaning when you declutter and you get rid of things, you don't have to buy new things. You're just getting rid of what you don't need and not replacing it with more junk. So that's my quote to start off for the day. Okay. So what is a minimalist wardrobe? So I have 3 pointers of what consists of a minimalist wardrobe. So it's practical, versatile, and unique to you. So what it is not, it's not boring, it's not restrictive, and it's not only 3 black shirts, 1 pair of jeans, and 1 pair of sneakers. So yes, my wardrobe is more than consists of 5 items. So let's move on to the next. So I came up with some methods and tips for each of you to maybe start your own journey for minimalism and being more conscious of what you're buying and what materials you're using. So the first one I think is the most well-known right now. I know it got really popular on Netflix, is the Marie Kondo method, or KonMari method. So it's her way of decluttering. So from what I've heard, if you follow it all the way through, you won't go buying more things that you don't need. Color theory, it's kind of a random one, but hear me out. So with the color theory, you could figure out what colors work best for you. Sometimes you put on that mustard yellow shirt or that bright yellow shirt and you're like, oh, this doesn't look good. So making sure to find what colors work best for you. That will restrict you when you're buying. You're not buying these random colors that don't work. The curated closet, there's a workbook and a book on curating your own closet. It kind of goes through all the details on how to make the perfect wardrobe for yourself. And then to do the more sustainable way, when you're purchasing or thrifting or whatever you're doing, have the environment in mind. Use recycled fabrics. I've heard of companies that use water bottles, recycled water bottles to make their fabric, instead of just making new plastic and using that basically. And then natural fibers like cotton, and I've heard of hemp and silk, depending on your needs. Usually the natural fibers last a lot longer. So with a 30-day, there's another thing, is a 30-day minimalist challenge. They have that usually at the beginning of the month, where you get rid of, the first day, you get rid of 1 thing, the second day it's 2, third day it's 3, and so on. So that's another challenge you can try. I wasn't able to make it through all the way through to that one, but if you guys are ambitious, I definitely try it. And so if we look at this infographic here, It's called the hierarchy of needs. And at the bottom, it says, use what you have. That should be the base of everything. You know, use what you have. And then going up from there, borrow, swap, thrift, make, and buy. So the last resort should be buying. And that saves you money as well. So, and then this last challenge here is the 10 by 10 wardrobe challenge, which is one that I've done. And I have an example, I have the example of it that I've done in the next couple slides. So the 10 by 10 challenge by Style B is basically you use 10 items of clothing for 10 days. In my instance, it was 15 items because 10 was too restrictive for me. And you find out what kind of mix and matches you can make with these outfits. And so the next slide is basically this 10-day wardrobe challenge with 15 items. And my takeaways from these are like, I figured out what I liked most, what works best with most outfits, and my takeaway from this is that my clothes were way more versatile than I thought. You know, there's so many outfits that you can see here, and there's probably more combinations that you can make. And then the second is that you don't have to spend extra money for new clothes. I could just use what I have and get creative. And the third takeaway for this is that I'm more intentional about what I bring into my closet and what materials I use. And yeah, so this is basically the challenge that I worked on. And on my last slide is just my Instagram. So you're welcome to follow and learn about sustainability and zero waste living. But yeah, so I think we're leaving the time for questions. So.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Viviana. I really appreciate that. It's funny as I'm looking at that 15-day challenge, I'm thinking, yeah, I probably only have like 15 items in my wardrobe that I consistently wear.
Yeah.
So, you know, why do I add a bunch of stuff that just sits there on a hanger and never gets used? Yeah, and so as we're talking about a sustainable wardrobe, I mean, obviously there's minimalism, I think is a way to achieve this because, you know, we're not buying a lot of stuff. Is it the only way? I don't think. So could you go back to that hierarchy real quick?
Sure thing. Yeah.
I would love to dive in on that. And while she's pulling that up, this is very much conversational. We'd love questions, try and help answer questions that people may have. If you have questions about, you know, the minimalistic approach and what that would be like, because when I first heard it, you know, my thought was, oh boy, am I only going to have 5 shirts? And I don't think that's the case. Anyway, so going back here to this hierarchy, I love this idea that, you know, first use what you have. That quote you shared at the first of getting rid of all that stuff you don't use is super simple and it's free to us, right? Obviously, what we would suggest is if you do go to get rid of that stuff, that we make sure we're not just landfilling it. If it's lightly used and needs a couple of repairs, you know, I'm sure that's a way we could learn to repair those and then donate them someplace. But you know, starting there is a good way. So we did have a question here.
Yeah, I have a question. So this weekend I got together with a friend. I dejunked like a bunch of my closet space, and she went through a bunch of the clothes, and then there's still some leftover clothes that I'm going to take to a thrift store and donate. And then we went to her house and did the same thing. She dejunked her closet and let me go through her old stuff. So we kind of like swapped in a way, and then we're also donating the leftovers. But my question is, and Viv knows this about me, I love thrifting and I love fashion. My problem isn't so much like, I feel like I am buying too much stuff from the thrift store. So I feel good about like the source, you know, I'm getting things secondhand, but then I feel like I have way too many clothes still. Do you have any tips for me?
All right, do you want to answer this or you want me to answer this?
Please, Viviana, I'd love your thoughts on it.
So like I have these suggestions here. Like I would definitely take one of these. Like I think for you specifically, the Marie Kondo method would work best. Because yeah, thrifting is awesome because they're secondhand and you're not using new textiles. But this Marie Kondo method, if you really like follow it to a T and like listen to what she has to say, you're not going to go and buy new things because you'll feel like you have what you need. And I would think if you're taking something in, you take 2 or 3 items out. I mean, set your own rules, whatever you can do. But for me at the beginning, it was like 1 in, 3 out. Now it might be like 1 in, 1 out for me.
Good thoughts. I love that. We've been guilty of the same. We have a group of friends in our neighborhood that we end up often swapping kids' clothes and moving stuff around. And at the end of the day, we always come home with bags just going, we're never going to use all this. But I feel better knowing that it's coming from somebody else and I'm not just buying it off the shelf, never using it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think that's that's a key. I like that. Why swaps are towards the bottom of that hierarchy. So good question. So Marina asked a question on, thoughts on purchasing items that are sustainable and quality without going over budget, or supporting corporations that aren't operating ethically or that aren't operating ethically sustainably. So what I interpret the question, and if I'm wrong, feel free to hop on and correct me here, but there are far more options now in terms of clothing that's sustainable and quality. I think several years ago, the thought was, if something's sustainable, it's either going to be not the best quality because it's not, proven, or it's going to be crazy expensive. And that's changing quickly. Some of even the large manufacturers are starting to see that and changing. A great example that people talk about all the time in the fashion industry is Allbirds. Familiar with Allbirds shoes, and how not only are they sustainable, but they are very, very transparent in their operations. They talk all the time about how they're super transparent and where they're sourcing materials from. In fact, you can go to their website and see where all the materials come from. And they are on par with the Nikes and Adidas type shoes in terms of price.
Yeah,
so,
they're around 100.
Yeah, and they have a more economic model now that's around 60-ish.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, so my thoughts there are, yes, there's definitely options now to be more sustainable. Now, if you want to go and buy like a Patagonia jacket, they're more money, but they have a lifetime guarantee on them, a lifetime repair. You send it in to get repaired, and they'll repair it. I've heard stories where people send something to repair it, and they're like, you know what, this material needed, we don't produce anymore. Here's a new one. Here's something else to use. And then they take that and they recycle it and donate it or use it in their other things. So you get what you pay for in terms of quality. I know we've all bought those a couple, $5 t-shirts or $5 jackets that end up falling apart. In the fashion industry, I definitely think if you want to make a very good choice, a sustainable choice, you need to buy something that's a little more quality that will last you more uses. I have 4 kids, and we made the mistake at one time of buying all 4 of them pairs of shoes from Payless. Sorry, I won't name a brand. We bought from a budget store, and those shoes quickly fell apart. It was several months of use over the summer, and they ever got holes like in the toes. You got to make sure that we're buying a little more quality, so they last a little longer. That's kind of my personal thoughts on that. I don't know, Vivi, any questions or thoughts you have on that topic as well?
Well, with the Patagonia, let's say you're buying a coat for winter or fall or whatever season. Would you rather have 5 okay coats or 1 really great coat? And you can break it up into, you buy this $200 coat and break it up to how many times you wear it. So, and instead of, buying coats that you're just going to end up getting rid of or throwing in the trash because they break. So.
Good question. So Kelly asked a question here that's kind of a follow-up to this, and I think we can segue really nice into this is, how do we incorporate sustainable fashion if we wanted to launch our own line? As a victim of fast fashion, low price points don't come without their caveats, and that's a good question. I wish I had more experience in the fashion line to tell you a little bit more how to incorporate it. From my view and my experience, I would say one of the first things is visibility. Even if you're not growing hemp to make your own materials, I think the biggest piece of that is going to be visibility. You hear a lot of consumers now are very concerned about where materials are being sourced, not only where the materials are being sourced, but also where they're being manufactured. Another factoid from an ethical fashion guide survey is that 68% of fast fashion brands don't maintain gender equality at their facilities. That's another one of those social aspects that consumers are starting to pay attention to. So if you're starting out in your own fashion line, I would first look at your supply chain and look how transparent you can be in terms of material sourcing, where they're coming from, what types of materials, but also the labor required in those pieces. And I think that's a good way to start out. The market is changing to where you're starting to get more materials that are far more sustainable. Hemp's growing like crazy. There's a lot of hemp that's being used. Well. What was that one? Sorry.
Bamboo as well.
Bamboo.
That's a good one.
Absolutely. I mean, I've heard of exotic materials. There's 2 or 3 groups I'm aware of right now that are making materials out of recycled LDPE. It's like soft like a towel, but it's recycled plastic bottles. So there are things out there, but again, the caveat there is pricing is not going to be low. It's going to be more expensive for those options.
Yeah, I think to add to that too, like I was looking into cotton, and you could see that that's like a natural fiber, but then it depends on how it's produced. So is cotton produced with a lot of pesticides, or is it organic cotton, or is it recycled cotton? And those have different price points. The normal cotton might just be the cheapest because it's pesticides and it's got all this stuff in it. So it's a matter of doing your research on what material is going to work best and is going to be the most efficient. And the company that I'm thinking about, actually, to compare to, if you want to do it, a more affordable company, but sustainable as well, as Pact. They do like is it a cotton or bamboo? I can't remember. Do you know of them?
I don't know off the top of my head, no.
Oh, okay, but yeah, you should look into that company if you're wanting to start something. So
good one. So Marina, follow-up question: how to avoid feeling overwhelmed when trying to have a sustainable wardrobe, budget-friendly, quality, doesn't support companies that aren't as transparent. It can be a lot. So anytime in my daily work, I get questions about this, not just fashion and wardrobe, but just any topic of sustainability. How to not be overwhelmed. And I think the key is just to start acting a little bit. Pick one area to start in, and work as best you can there. The thing is, you're not expected to be perfect in this. I'm not perfect. I'll be the first to admit that. There's no way I'm perfect in terms of a sustainable wardrobe. But there's areas that I learn and I get that down, and then I'm like, okay, what's the next area? Now where to? And I think you just have to pick one little spot and start there. Don't try and take it all in. So, Viviana, any other thoughts you have on that question?
Yeah, I actually got really overwhelmed because learning about minimalism and then sustainability, I'm like, well, there's, you think of a company, you have to think of all these factors to get like perfectly, but I would just focus on what you want to focus on first. Like if you want to start on beauty and trying to be sustainable there, just focus on that for a while, and don't worry about, other purchases that you make at other companies, and just go from there. Just small chunks, like you were saying, or work on your bathroom and make it sustainable. Or if you're doing just wardrobe, look into shoes first. So that's what I say, just start with something like you were saying. So
awesome. So a question that just popped up is, good resources that list eco-friendly clothing companies. Viviana, do you have any in your experience that you've worked with that are good eco-friendly ones? I mentioned Allbirds. Everybody knows Patagonia. Patagonia's a big one. There's a lot of smaller up-and-coming ones. And honestly, a lot of those are doing their promotion through social media. A lot of because they're targeting a younger demographic that is a little more concerned. A lot of them are going through social media. So it looks like the Good Trade is one that just popped up that people were talking about.
Yeah.
I'm going to find it real quick and I'll bring it up. So anything else there, Viviana? Do you know of any that you could say?
I'm like drawing a blank. I'm sorry. The company that I'm wearing right now, but I just can't even remember the name.
It'll come to us. It'll be there. So
yeah, it'll get there.
We'll come back to that one, Melinda. Good question. John asked, so many times we buy something and then after wearing it a few times, realize it wasn't, weren't really into it, and it ends up just sitting there in your closet. I have like 3 button-up shirts I bought for business, wore them once, and I was like, I hate the way they fit or the way they look. It's a good question. And he's asking, how do I make sure I really like something before I bring it into my wardrobe? Viviana, as you're curating your minimalistic wardrobe, have you ever had this situation where you've you get something and you're like, oh, I don't know if I like it or not?
Yeah. And it's like major regrets. Yeah, you got to think of a couple factors. You kind of have to have like a couple things in mind, like material, practicality, and like, do you like the way it looks on you, basically. So actually, if it's John, my fiance, hi. I was just looking at this jacket, this fleece jacket that I had, and the top part was like, the material wasn't as warming as like the fleece, and I'm like, well, this looks cool and I like the way it looks on me, but it's not practical. So you really have to think about it, try it on in the store if you can, look at the reviews. If it's an online website, see if it fits for your body shape or whatever. I always have to do the digging first before I buy something. So that's what I would do.
Good thought. Thank you. That's, yeah, try before you buy.
Yes, definitely. People
I mean,
don't think that, but
we've heard that a lot, but yeah, that's the big thing.
it's important.
Good questions. Thank you. Another question here. What are your opinions on how I can differ my own fashion line to others? What will my sustainable designs do to attract an audience? What makes my brand better than others? Ooh, those are good questions, Kelly. I'm coming to those just a minute. Before I forget, I want to go back to Melinda's question about, where to go for some good resources. One of the resources that just popped in my head, I just double checking, Fair Trade certified. That's a good place to start, to look at any company that is Fair Trade certified. There are some certifications out there like Fair Trade that look at not just sourcing, but they're looking at the labor aspect of it and making sure that they are transparent in their labor practices, how they represent the workforce, the workers' rights, and a lot of the organizations that are concerned about that are also concerned about their impact on the earth. So that would be a great place I would suggest to start.
I have another one too. Before
yes, go ahead.
I know some companies, but definitely look into B Corp companies. A lot of the times they will be sustainable. And like some examples of B Corps, Patagonia is one. One based out of Utah is Cotopaxi. So basically what they do is they use dead stock fabric. So fabric that other companies that have quality fabric didn't end up using, like the colors and whatnot. So they Frankenstein backpacks together and make it look really unique. So
good ones.
B Corps.
Good ones. Kelly, your question on how you can differentiate your own fashion line. That's a really good question. Again, I'm going to start off with number one, transparency. To me, organizations that I know are being upfront and honest, even if it's like hey, we're not perfect in this area, that wins my trust, and I want to support them with my dollars rather than going to a large organization that I can't trust as easily. Given you are going to be competing against large producers that have won the love of consumers. So being transparent, I'd say being involved with your consumers as you start to build your brand. That's a harder one, to be able to say, okay, what materials, what type of patterns or shapes or anything like this, just heeding the needs of your consumers. And you can only do that to a certain extent, obviously, before you lose your own designs and whatnot. But I think that's a big piece. And then there are some other resources. Like I said, there's some organizations, some like Fair Trade, but there are some in the fashion industry, and I'm sorry, they're slipping my mind. I'll have to look for them here real quick, that kind of have a pulse on the industry, if you will, and are talking about what are the trends, what are people, what are we seeing that people are dying for. But I think we're in an age now where people are starting to wake up to these things and understand that what they do has an impact. And if they can know that they can buy a quality piece of clothing that is not having a negative impact on people or planet, and that looks good, I think they're going to like that. That's my personal opinion. Viviana, you have other thoughts there?
Yeah, just have like a niche. Like I think like Cotopaxi does. They pull from other they buy dead stock fabric. They buy that fabric from other companies and make something out of it. So it's so unique. I don't know of any other companies that do that. And this dress company, I forget what it's called, but they do use also that dead stock fabric of higher quality materials that people use, and it's like out of fashion, and so they buy that material and they reuse it. And that's just kind of their own unique way of contributing. So I just say find something unique that is a little bit different.
Marina just said Christy Dawn. Is that the dress company?
Christy Dawn, thank you.
Bam, love it. I have a couple of the Cotopaxi backpacks, and they're really cool. I mean, super unique.
Yes.
To see them. They may not be the fashion in 20 years, but you know, I feel better knowing that this backpack wasn't one I bought brand new. That was the scraps that would have been laying there anyway.
Yeah.
So really cool companies. Good. Other questions that we've got here. I'm just looking to see, make sure we've hit all of those that I've seen so far. Looks like we've hit them so far. So I wanted to, you know, kind of go back a little bit, you know, from the URA. The reason this is something that we felt we wanted to share is, you know, I shared a little bit that the clothing industry is a large industry. There's a big impact on the environment and on people in terms of, you know, the labor used to produce these. And it's something that you know, you wouldn't think would have as big as impact as, like, you know, some of the industrial practices, but absolutely. The clothing we buy and the money we spend on that can do a lot there. So from the URA standpoint, we want you to help you learn how to manage that, you know, be more sustainable that way. If you can fix it, something we want to do, you know, what we can do with our Fix It clinics. And so if there's specific skills that you want to learn in terms of clothing, let us know. I would be happy to take that back and see how we can incorporate that into a Fix It clinic. If you're an expert on clothing, we would love your expertise, your sharing your knowledge with us. I'll be happy to help share with somebody surging and how I've done it, but you know, that's one small aspect. So Melinda, good comment here on documentary. Oh, The True Cost. That is a good documentary. Yeah, if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, you gotta watch it.
I think it's on Netflix.
Yep. Like all good documentaries right now, apparently they're on Netflix.
Yeah.
So good questions. Any other questions then? You know, this is coming to the end of the materials we had for today. We appreciate those that have joined us for today. Any other questions or thoughts, Viviana? Anything else you wanted to end up with? Since you're our minimalistic expert here, I just wanted you to make sure that we've passed as much of your knowledge on as we can.
Well, the only thing I have to say is, if you're following me, ask any more questions if you come across them, and ask about these different challenges and whatnot, and I'd be happy to help. So, yeah.
Cool, thank you. So last comment I would just have is, you know, when we talk about sustainable wardrobe, the vision I've had in my head at times is like, well, are we all going back to like wearing, you know, super crude things made out of like bamboo or something like that? And I don't think that's the case. I think the big key here to being, you know, sustainable in your wardrobe is using what we have. When we do have to, you know, we have to get something, we look at other ways other than just buying. And Viviana's done a great job of pointing that out. Borrow, swap, thrift, make, or fix, or alter. Those are some skills that used to be very prevalent that, you know, our consumerist convenient society has kind of lost. And so I think if we can incorporate those types of things back into our lives, it will help a lot with our wardrobe. And at the very end, when we do have to buy, we use those dollars to buy from organizations that we know are making a better impact or leaving as little impact as possible. And there's a lot of them out there, and they're starting to grow. And the more we spend there, the more that's going to push those groups to continue being good. So John asked another quick question here. Where do I learn more about what materials are sustainable so that I know what to look for? Ooh, good question. And this is a great question, because one thing we have to, you know, that we have to be cautious about is you'll hear some great marketing claims from organizations saying this is sustainable, and the material may be good, but maybe necessarily the manufacturing practices, or they source the material from one side of the earth, they transport it to the other side to get sewn together, and then they fly it back or something like that. This is a hard question, John, and I do not have the perfect answer for you on that, other than to do research. There's a lot of groups out there that are trying to help illuminate this, but nobody's got all the right information. Sure. I would say a couple of things. If an organization is saying, hey, this is the most sustainable new material, do your research on it. Try and find out everything you can. Where is it grown or harvested, and how is it harvested, and who does it? What are they paid? What's the impacts to that region? Could they be producing food instead of this crop to grow this? And asking these types of questions. And, the internet is our friend here. There's a wealth of information to be able to go and start to find that. If you don't, ask around. I don't have the answers to all that, but I'll be happy to try and, ping my network and see what's going on. I think, the key is to it's who you know that can help you with finding those answers. But yeah, my biggest thing would be, are they transparent in everything that they're doing? Are they willing to share that? If it seems like they're hiding something, that's when I would be cautious, is what I would say.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't trust companies that are selling that fabric, to read about it there. Just read about it from a non-biased standpoint. And like what I've done in the past is looked up YouTube videos on sustainable fabrics, and they'll just be people that have done the research and kind of give you a short synopsis of, the most sustainable to the least sustainable fabrics. So definitely go look at that. So
awesome. Good. And Kelly asked the last question, in launching your own fashion, what tips or advice do we have on how we can source the sustainable fabrics? It's a good question. And this one, again, I'm going to say you need to do a lot of research on this one. There are new materials that we're hearing a lot about that are really good. Hemp and bamboo are two of the ones that come immediately to my mind. And the reason for this is from my knowledge of things like hemp, is it grows much faster than cotton, requires insane amounts of less of water. So it's a fraction of what cotton requires, naturally more resistant to pests than cotton, and is also very strong. And so fibers like that, where you can go to source these things, I do not have a contact there. If anybody here does, please help share it. I would love to know. But that's about all I have on that. Viviana, if any other thoughts you have on material or avenues for sourcing?
I don't. I'm so sorry. I don't have any, but
that's okay.
I just know about the materials that are good and what are good, better, best. So yeah, like the hemp we were talking about. So
excellent. Any other questions or ideas? Again, big thank you to Viviana for sharing. It's fun to follow her on social and see all her ideas on minimalism, because it applies not just to wardrobe, which is our topic today, but there's a lot of other areas in which she's applying that minimalistic attitude, and it's very much the same here. I think this hierarchy, I love this triangle, and I've used it in a lot of different areas of my life, is to first use what you have, refuse what you don't need. And then if you do need it, look for avenues other than just buying it, which is a big, kind of the culture ingrained in us right now, is that consumerism. So any final questions, anybody else? All right, well, again, big thank you to Viviana. Thank you to all those that joined. We appreciate your questions. If you have additional questions, please reach out to us through the Utah Recycling Alliance's website. There's a form on there for questions. Please shoot us an email. We'll be happy to try and help as best we can. If we don't know the answer, obviously we'll try and connect you with the best resources. We're recording this webinar, so if there's things you want to come back to, we will make sure that we can get the recording posted. I think we've been posting them on our Facebook page at this time. So Utah Recycling Alliance, utahrecyclingalliance.org. So again, thanks all, appreciate it. Thank you, Viviana. Take care, and we'll talk to everybody else again soon.
All right, see ya.